In the spring of 1901, sponge divers working off a small Greek island surfaced from a shipwreck carrying statues, jewelry, and one small, unremarkable-looking lump of corroded bronze that nobody paid much attention to for months. When archaeologists finally looked closely, they found gear teeth, fine, precise, deliberately cut gear teeth, inside an object that had been sitting on the floor of the Aegean Sea for roughly 2,000 years. It would take more than a century, and technology that didn't exist yet, to understand what they were actually looking at. Welcome to the Ancient Archives, where we go where mainstream timelines get uncomfortable, and we show you exactly what the evidence says. The wreck was found near the island of Antikythera, between Crete and the Greek mainland, by sponge divers who had taken shelter from a storm and stumbled onto one of the richest shipwrecks in the ancient Mediterranean. The ship itself dates to somewhere around 70 to 60 BCE, based on pottery and coins recovered from the same site, and it was likely carrying looted or purchased Greek art toward Rome when it sank. The Greek government sponsored a full salvage operation the following year, recovering bronze and marble statues, glassware, and jewelry, most of which drew far more immediate attention than the small, corroded lump of bronze that would eventually outshine everything else on board historically. For decades after its 1901 discovery, the bronze fragment, now known as the Antikythera mechanism, sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens as a curiosity nobody could fully explain. Early researchers could see it contained gears, some kind of dial system, and Greek inscriptions, but the corrosion made most of the internal structure impossible to read with the naked eye. British science historian Derek de Solla Price took up serious study of the object starting in the 1950s, and his 1974 monograph, based on gamma-ray and X-ray images taken with help from Greek nuclear physicist Charalampos Karakalos, was the first real attempt to map the gear layout scientifically rather than speculatively. Price's work proposed it was a calendar computer, a genuinely prescient conclusion for the time, though the imaging technology of the 1970s still couldn't resolve enough internal detail to confirm the full gear train or read most of the inscriptions. For much of the 20th century, the leading theories ranged from an astrolabe to some kind of astronomical toy, and it took another 3 decades of technological progress before anyone could say with real confidence what was inside. The real breakthrough came in the 2000s, when a research team led by mathematician Tony Freeth and physicist Mike Edmonds, working with the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, used high-resolution X-ray computed tomography, essentially a specialized CT scanner built specifically for this artifact, to look inside the corroded bronze without damaging it further. What they found, published in peer-reviewed papers in Nature starting in 2006, was staggering in its precision. At least 30 separate bronze gears, some with teeth just over a millimeter apart, arranged in a differential gear train that could model the motion of the sun and moon through the zodiac, predict lunar and solar eclipses using a 223-month cycle known since Babylonian times, and track a 4-year cycle corresponding to the ancient Olympic and other Pan-Hellenic games. Here's why this matters so much to the history of technology, and it's worth being precise about the claim because the mechanism itself doesn't need exaggeration to be remarkable. A geared mechanical device of this complexity, one using a differential gear, was not documented again in the historical record for well over 1,000 years. The next comparable mechanical complexity in surviving devices shows up in medieval European astronomical clocks starting around the 14th century. That doesn't mean nothing like it existed in between. It means nothing like it has survived or been discovered from that gap. The honest, evidence-based conclusion, the one archaeologists and historians of science actually hold, is not that a lost hyper-advanced civilization built this, but that Hellenistic Greek engineering, building on centuries of Babylonian astronomical data and Greek geometric theory, was capable of a level of precision mechanical engineering that later Roman-era and medieval societies, for reasons still debated, didn't sustain or continue documenting. The mechanism's front dial displayed the zodiac and Egyptian calendar together, letting a user track both systems at once, while the back carried 2 spiral dials, one tracking the 19-year Metonic cycle used to reconcile lunar months with the solar year, and another tracking the 223-month Saros cycle used to predict eclipses. A small subsidiary dial even tracked the 4-year cycle of the Panhellenic Games, including the Olympics, which tells us this wasn't purely a scientific instrument for astronomers alone. It was built to be relevant to ordinary civic and religious life, where knowing the timing of festivals and games mattered as much as knowing when an eclipse was coming. Who built it is still genuinely unresolved, and this is a real open question in the field, not a mystery being manufactured for drama. The ship carrying it was traveling a route consistent with cargo from Rhodes and the astronomer Hipparchus, who worked on the island of Rhodes, and whose lunar theory matches irregularities built into the mechanism's moon tracking gear, is one of the leading candidates historians point to as a possible source of the underlying astronomical model. Though there's no inscription naming a specific maker, some researchers have proposed a link to the workshop tradition associated with Archimedes, who died more than a century before this specific device was built, based on ancient writers like Cicero, describing similar geared devices attributed to him. That connection is plausible as an intellectual lineage, a tradition Archimedes may have started that others continued, but it is not the same as saying Archimedes personally built this exact device, and responsible historians are careful to keep those two claims separate. The inscriptions covering the mechanism's surfaces turned out to be almost as important as the gears themselves. Using reflectance imaging techniques developed for the project, researchers recovered thousands of Greek characters, essentially an instruction manual carved directly into the bronze, describing what each dial showed and how to read it. This is not a device whose builders were trying to hide their work or encode secret knowledge. It came with user instructions. That detail alone undercuts a lot of the more sensational framing this artifact sometimes gets online. The idea that it's evidence of some suppressed, forbidden ancient technology. It was a functioning scientific instrument, built to be understood and used by educated people of its time, that simply never got a sequel we've found yet. In 2021, a team at University College London, led by Freeth, published a proposed reconstruction of the mechanism's full gear system, including the complex front dial, showing the position of the Sun, Moon, and 5 planets known to the ancients. Using the gear ratios that survive in the corroded fragments, combined with the ancient Greek astronomical models it clearly draws on. That reconstruction remains a model, an informed best reconstruction based on physical evidence, not a certainty, since key sections of the original gearing did not survive intact. Different research teams have proposed slightly different reconstructions of the missing sections, and that's normal, healthy scientific disagreement over incomplete physical evidence, not a cover-up or a sign the mainstream account is falling apart. Several teams have gone further and actually built working physical replicas based on these reconstructions, testing whether the proposed gear ratios genuinely produce accurate astronomical predictions when built and turned by hand. Clockmaker groups and engineering departments in several countries have independently built functioning models, and the fact that multiple, independently constructed replicas successfully track the eclipse cycles and planetary positions the inscriptions describe is itself a strong form of verification, the kind of physical, testable evidence that separates this from speculative history. This is worth underlining. You can't fully fake or oversell a mechanism whose predicted function has been independently rebuilt and shown to actually work using period-appropriate materials and tools. Marine archaeologists have also returned to the original wreck site multiple times in the 2010s and 2020s, using technical diving and robotic exploration to recover additional artifacts, including human skeletal remains and further ship components, confirming the vessel was a large merchant ship and refining the dating of the wreck itself. Nothing recovered in these later expeditions has changed the core scientific conclusions about the mechanism, but they've added valuable context about the ship it was traveling on and the broader cargo it was part of. So here's the actual documented reality behind the headline. A precision-geared astronomical calculator, using technology not seen again in the surviving record for over 1,000 years, was built by Hellenistic Greek engineers around the 1st or 2nd century BCE, most likely drawing on the astronomical work of Hipparchus, possibly connected to a workshop tradition associated with Archimedes, and it came with its own instructions engraved in bronze. Nobody hid this. Nobody suppressed it. It sank in a shipwreck. sat unrecognized in a museum drawer for most of a century, and only gave up its full complexity once X-ray technology from the 21st century was pointed at 2,000-year-old bronze. That's not a cover-up. That's just how long it sometimes takes evidence to catch up to what already happened. If you want the sites and artifacts that genuinely don't fit the tidy version of history, subscribe to the Ancient Archives, where we bring you the documented evidence and let you decide what it means.